go for it. So you want to see a low wide pot or more of a taller pot? Anybody have any preference? Any plants specifically that somebody's like, man, I really need to see a pot for that. This is what I've been looking for. Huh?
Which is more difficult to do?
It depends on the potter, depends on the clay. I think that they're equally difficult. Opening things wider and keeping them controlled it's all different muscle memory steps to get there, right? Instead of making it open and wide, most people find taller things more difficult. So, anybody have any suggestions? Tall or short? That's all I really heard.
Short and wide.
Short and wide, okay.
Short and wide.
So, there's an appropriate wheel speed that you want to get to. And that's about it. This is called a Shimpo whisper, by the way. You can't hear anything? That's why it's called that. This is like the Tesla of wheels. We're on magnets. The magnet is kicking it around. The inertia is continuing. It's pretty cool. So anyways, low and wide. Can everybody see the pottery from here? I would take the splash pan off, but I'm going to mess everything up on the floor too much. Good. So you want to get a little bit of water, and this is the centering stage. And I also do coning at the same time. A lot of people do two separate steps there. They go, and the clay kicks them around until they get it in there, you know. But if you bring it up and cone, you kind of bring it in the center as you do it. And then I'm going to push back down. This is good for finding air pockets that might be in there. You're not going to find them all, but it's pretty good clay. I didn't really wedge it much. I think some of y'all saw me doing that. I went and hid behind the table for a second. For some of it. You normally have a table dedicated to that. It's really sturdy. You can go whack, 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 wedge out a bunch of clay at once. So something about ceramics. Everybody thinks of the movie Ghost right here. So go ahead and say that. We allow you one of those jokes in our classroom. One. And then everybody's cut off.
One.
Just one, right? You're out. You gotta go.
Yeah, one ghost joke.
Every industry has some joke. You know, like the beer truck driver. It's a hot Sunday, it's a hot Saturday afternoon, and they're delivering a bunch of kegs, and some guy in a crummy truck goes by it, rolls down his window. It's a manual window, of course. Hey, pals, throw one of those in the back. You know, that guy hears that every weekend, probably. So we hear the ghost joke. All right, so this is coating and centering. It's very important. Clay preparation. You didn't see, like I said, there's a little bit of wedging that I did. We usually do a good amount of that. If it's brand new clay, for the most part, it's good. But if you're reclaiming your clay, which is really important, I mentioned I like to reuse things. No waste, as much as possible. The company is called Full Circle Studios, so it's part of the idea. Like everything, even this water, I can reuse a few times before it goes down the drain, where it never does. See how it's got a little bit of a wobble there? Anybody see that? You have to push past that just a little bit. And it'll square back up. Now I'm holding my hand on an angle. I'm pushing my fist down. I started center and I rolled out. You'll notice my hands work together a lot. When people get down on the wheel for the first time and they go, but I'm lefty. And sorry, your hands are both equally doing work. You're ambidextrous almost immediately. You gotta learn to work as a team, and they're both doing something to help the other. So now I'm gonna punch a center punch, and I wanna check the depth. This is really important for, I make a lot of production pots. I crank out like cup, 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 and I want them to all be the same and have the same size foot ring at the bottom. With planter pots, it's important for drainage. If you want to have the height, or if it's a flat bottom and you're attaching feet, that might be cool to have a real skinny bottom, but it will crack as soon as you start putting holes in it. These things aren't just stick them on the shelf, let it dry. You have to take care of them a little bit. So I lost one pot that I really wanted to bring where I attached feet to it, because I don't normally do that, and it cracked in the kiln right now. It was just a little bit too thin where the center hole was for drainage, and that was too much tension. Like a 3-inch crack. That's, to me, a wasteful pot. That's when it's wasteful, is when it's gone through the kiln and it didn't make it out. So you have to check the thickness in order to be accurate. This is just below 1/4 inch. I'm okay with that because that's right in the dead center where the hole's going to go anyways. But outside of that, if I want a taller foot, I need to leave more clay in order to carve it away. I'm going to show that to you in the trimming stage here in just a minute. So I know the depth now, and I can continue opening the center hole. I'm going to cap the clay that I'm moving over. If anybody really wants to, they're welcome to jump up and check this out. Just kind of stand off to the side. So you see how the clay is not ridging up? And it can do that if you don't keep the sponge on it. And I'm pulling straight towards my right hip. It's the most comfortable place to work on a wheel. This is the opening stage.
It's actually really quiet up here too. It's crazy how quiet it is.
We bought 10 of these to go into the new studio that's going in Garland. So look for us in spring. We're almost there. And they're very useful in community studios. Because some of the other motors are like, you want a powerful one. Welcome. Come on in and find a seat. So you want to make sure it's flat, or even more importantly, the slope of your pot on the floor is important. If you have any kind of doming, especially with our drainage, it's not going to go down the center hole if all the water runs to the outside. You don't have adequate drainage out there as well. So the shape, always pay attention to the shape, because it's going to determine what you do with the pot to make it actually useful. And I'm not the best at keeping my plants alive, I'll be honest with you, but I continue to try. I lost a 18-year-old juniper one time because it was in an undersized pot and it got saturated outside and I couldn't get home. So 2 days it got dumped on and it was just soaking outside and I had nobody to go over there and get it. It was really upsetting, but I kept trying. Now I've grown my own too from seed. Got one like that big. So anyways, drainage, right? Very important. All right, now we're outside. This is kind of determining the diameter of the pot, the base, especially if I start curving it out. It might lose stability if I don't have a wide enough base. But I always go up before I go out, meaning the shape at the end. So I have to be conscious of how much clay I have in the rim or in the walls at any time. Because if I overstretch in the shaping mode, then the clay is not going to have the strength. And we want these pots to be able to go outside in a little bit of temperature. So you got to keep it slightly thicker than maybe a creamer that you would have on your kitchen counter, right? So I'm pulling now. You do this in incremental movements. A lot of people get into my classes and they just go and bear down on it, and all of a sudden they break this top collar off. And it's really frustrating. This is such a sensitive thing to do, this clay. It's not woodworking, it's not metal. It's soft, it's just, it feels like, it's called clay body. It feels like pushing on your skin, It's got give. So if you overdo it, you can't do it, It's good. Exactly. I tell people all the time, it's like asking somebody to do something. If you go see a guy at Home Depot, hey, can you come over here and tell me about this? What are you doing over here? You go, hey, buddy, you have a second? Come show me about these paints real quick, or whatever, a friend. Put the milk back. Hey, is there any way that you can put the milk back? It's like that with clay. If you tell it to do something really abrupt and move the clay aggressively, it's gonna go. Hey man, F you,
If you found somebody that actually can help you at Home Depot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it happened. Yeah. So you see, I'm doing a little bit of shaping now at the end, and I'm keeping the rim kind of chunky. We all like a nice chunky rim that either ledges in or ledges out. I know we're masculine and feminine with a lot of bonsai stuff. So the shape really determines what you want to do. So you use your fingers laid to do these things. You can, just a little bit of pressure. I'm asking it to do something. I'm holding it. Hey, come on. Just chill. And then it goes into shape. A lot of people do this. Moving their hands all around, and their pots show. You want to really chill with your pot, and also when you're coming on and off the clay, it's real important to be gentle. Called presenting yourself to the clay. I might move quickly, but I know when I'm touching the clay, we're about to, and I slow down. It's not an aggressive movement at all. Watch if I move too fast. That easy, the whole thing goes by. Okay, so this is pretty much a thrown pot. A lot of the process comes after this step. So a lot of times in a production studio, somebody that makes a lot of pots, is really what that means. Or similar in that count. So if I want to make 50 minutes in a day, I'll sit down all day, and that's all I do. And then I process those for the next 2 weeks. So this part of it isn't what we do all day. You can't just do this, right? Because nobody will finish the pots. So we got to stop and do other stuff. So there's one pot. I'm pretty strict on the shape. A lot of people will put things like the throw marks in it, pretty, a little more rustic. You've seen that before on some pots. Those lines will give the glaze something to grab onto and give highs and lows. So the deeper the cut, the more pooling it might give you. And then something about wheelwork is you kind of stuck with something that's similar to round. You guys want these big rectangular squarish pots. It's a different way of making a pot a lot of times. You can adjust this once it's stiffened up, and I can hammer it side to side, or I use a paddle. It's an old traditional way of shaping the pot and holding it inside. If you take a minute and go over there, you'll see some different shaped pots. They've got kind of bellies and stuff like that. I went off round with a couple of round shapes. So you can see it is doable, but typically people that do a lot of wheel work, it's round. Just makes sense, right?
Is oval started on a wheel?
Can be, yeah, definitely. So there's a way to actually cut a slit. Now, this is really hard when you start punching holes in things. You can cut, it almost looks like a cat eye in the base, and you lose that clay, pull it out, put water on the bat, and you cut it free so that it will move. The water gets underneath of it so that it will shift around almost. And then you go like this and pull at the ends of the cat eyes, and it closes the cat eye. And then you have that nice oval shape with an oval inside as well. I've done it a couple times. That's good. I've done it a lot. You can do it. There's other ways of making oval too, right? You can just, like I said, you can just go, at a certain point, you can just go, whoop, and it'll do it itself, and then you have a round bottom at the top. Last parts of this is to trim. So I'm gonna, this is a bevel tool. Everybody okay with this shape? Anything else? Okay. Bevel tool, take off some excess clay. Sometimes you'll see these big knobby outsides, where it's like this, and then it's straight wall, and there's another knob. I've got a couple of those over there. That's sometimes created with a tool that is shaped like that shape. You just hold it there, and it carves the clay away, and it creates, I hope I'm making sense. There's a little bit of a belly, and it's not done with your finger. It's done with an outside tool, and it just carves away the shape. I like to carve that in when I'm trimming. It's a different way of doing it. Trimming is what I'm going to show you with pots that are set up and ready for it. Trimming is a lot like in woodworking. There's a lathe. You get a chunk of wood, and this ribbon of wood comes off. That's really what I'm doing. I'm taking this hunk of clay that's kind of in a basic shape, and then I'm putting the detail work into it. All right, that's a pot. I forgot one of my big sponges. Do this. At the end, you always wire tool. That's it's important to free it from the throwing bat, which is the thing that I'm about to take off underneath of the tool, underneath of the clay. So you hold it real tight, because if you don't, you're going to get a little bit of slack. This is like almost like dental floss but made of metal. If you don't hold it real tight side to side, it's going to pooch, and then all that will go up once it grabs the clay. It'll carve some of that clay away, so you'll be more prone to cracking and having issues in the back because you didn't keep it as thick as you wanted to. Remember when I checked the depth earlier? I can see. If you want to keep that, you got to keep it taut. Run the wire through. That also keeps it from ovaling out on you when you don't want it to. If it's holding on and the rims are drying first, underneath it's stuck to the bat and it's just compacted clay, so it dries last. So the air is blowing it across, and if it starts drying just like that, the bottom isn't catching up, it's pulling on itself, and that's creating a lot of tension. So this goes back to when you work a studio, you're working the whole studio. You have to flip things. put it back under plastic. Get that trimmed real quick before it dries out too much. It's fun to keep up with it all. Okay. This is called a throwing vat. Like I said, I use these to, and a lot of people use them made out of plaster. It allows people to move their pots without warping them. The bigger it is, you can't just lift it off the wheel head. Do something. you may see online. It all comes down to how much time you're able to care for the plant, how many times you're able to water a day, what you're able to protect it from. If it's 100 degrees or just from 70 to 25 in a 24-hour period, so more moderate climate. Well, just everybody's life is different, right? Like if you work from home and are able to constantly baby your plants, then you can be more extreme in your aesthetic. If you've got a 9 to 5 and you want to go to your kid's basketball game on Saturday and not water water plants twice a day, then you may be going a larger pot than you might want to aesthetically.
I think it's a lot like ceramics.
But yeah,
if I want to really get after it, I got to get after it.
Yeah. I
I make a lot of, like, I just call it useful pottery. So bowls that I want people to actually lug around and throw in their dishwasher.
There's clay, and then there's a clay body, which is a combination of different clay materials. So what makes a stoneware? Stoneware is the presence of ball clay. Ball clay in the United States mostly comes from Kentucky. But ball clay is going to lend to plasticity, whereas porcelains are made from just kaolins. And kaolins tend to come from overseas unless you have a domestic kaolin deposit, which also Kentucky. And then earthenwares are a lower temperature clay that sometimes go a little higher depending on what they're fortified with. Most iron-bearing earthenwares can go a little higher, which is why you see terracottas that can withstand higher heat. But the main difference is the types of clays that make up the clay body that makes the difference between an earthenware, stoneware, and porcelain.
In order to avoid scorching, some shade in Texas, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes with block, cardboard blocks on.
You did the burlap. Have you seen that one?
If it's that hot, I usually bring them towards shade.
Yeah.
So if I want to, go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just saying, it looks terrible, but that's what.
Hey, man, jeez.
It's one of the ways to. But yeah, that's one of the ways to drape burlap over your pots, and then they hold water, and which block sun, and looks terrible on the bench.
Yeah, or else you're out there
Watering three times a day. Yeah.
watering the pot.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Well, that's the other thing too. You gotta let your hose run for 5 minutes so you don't just boil it right out of the hose.
Yeah.
The thinner pots, I'm going to try, see how I'm going in? The more out I am, the more out of control it's going to be because of this centrifugal force. So if I want to make it real thin, I'm going to try and invert it a little bit and then shape it out. But I have to keep aware of how thick that wall is in order to do this. So that rim stays thick while I thin out the place that's going to move the least. That's the bottom. Up here is all a little bit thicker because it's going to stretch out. So getting this clay up right there. Now I'm going to start bringing it up.
So your studio is in actually downtown North?
We're going to be there in spring. Yeah, we're literally putting shelves up and drywall in all of our free time studios. We have it. Our actual studio currently is in Dallas. And it's just a detached garage that happens to be bigger than a house. It's pretty well equipped, man. So this is, I'd say this is a little over 1/4 of an inch. I can definitely make it thinner. I'm a little worried about it because there's some air pockets in here, Brian. But I'm going to cut this in half and show you what the wall looks like. See that top going crazy? So I'm not really expecting to keep this one as it is. Okay, general shapes thrown. I'd say it's a little under 1/4 of an inch. It's a little heavier down here. So I'm going to cut this in half. Just go straight down the middle. This is a very detailed thing. I'm using the tips of my fingertips a lot of the time. You don't really want to rush it. So what I'm doing is I start at the base. If I'm throwing a pot, I'm going to do it over here. You always have to work on this side because it's going this way. If you are saying I'm lefty and you go over here, it's going to go into your fingertips, so you can't do that. So when I throw, I start at the bottom where the wall is. My fingertips push outward, and these go just underneath. And as these roll, these bring that up. And I'm going to make that happen like 2, 3, 4, 6 times, 15, depends on how big it is. I might work something for a couple weeks, and it's just this part.